Under the blazing lights, Jasmine Crockett speaks first, confident, articulate, determined to control the game from the opening minutes. But she doesn't anticipate that Candace Owens, with her calm demeanor and razor-sharp arguments, will gradually turn the tables. Candace not only stands firm in every word, but also unleashes a series of evidence that locks down every counter-argument. And then, at the precise moment, she delivers a cold, precise statement, leaving the entire room stunned before diving into the story. Comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. Jasmine Crockett suddenly adjusts her posture in her chair, not out of nerves, but precision. Her deep cobalt blue suit is the kind of color that demands attention. Across from her is Candace Owens' legs crossed, a sharp smile, eyes probing. They're on Voice of America, a late-night show on the American View Network broadcast from Seattle, known for its incisive political segments. Voice of America isn't a place for finding common ground. It's where you plant your flag. Today's topic is familiar: race in America, criminal justice, partisan politics. Nothing new on the surface, but everyone knows when Candace Owens is in the room. It's not about the issue being discussed. It's about control. The host, Brown James, kicks off. Congresswoman Crockett, you've spoken forcefully about inequality in the justice system, but many like Candace argue the system works fine, and race is often used as an excuse. Your thoughts? Jasmine doesn't blink. She doesn't budge, her voice low and steady. The issue isn't that race is mentioned too much. It's that it's ignored until someone pays with their life. Candace flashes a cold, confident smile, not to soothe, but to warn. Congresswoman, I think it's dangerous when politicians push a victimhood mentality, the idea that every bad thing happening to Black Americans stems from racism. That's not honest. I'm living proof. A few nods appear off camera. That's how Candace always starts, positioning herself as the exception, then trying to erase the rule. Jasmine leans forward slightly, a faint reflex amid rising pressure. You believe systemic racism is exaggerated. Candace's smile doesn't waver. Absolutely, the data doesn't lie. We have more Black millionaires than ever, the biggest stars, the most powerful voices in entertainment and culture. They're not just Black, they're celebrated. What we're seeing now is victimhood becoming currency. Brown, James glances at Candace, sensing she's taking the lead. Candace doesn't rush. She waits, letting the room's atmosphere shift subtly, as if something has changed that no one yet notices. She turns to Jasmine. That's an interesting stance, Congresswoman. She says, because last night I read a public filing that tells a different story, a police brutality lawsuit in Dallas when you were a public defender. A pause, not dramatic, just direct. Candace blinks. What are you talking about? She asks, laughing loudly. I don't know what you're talking about. Jasmine holds her gaze, pulling a neatly folded paper from her file's side pocket, filed at the Dallas DA's office. Candace continues, you represented a Black man beaten by police, and you convinced him to take a low settlement instead of going to trial. You didn't just file. You wanted it over quickly. Am I wrong? Jasmine opens her mouth, but no words come. Brown, James leans forward, visibly uncomfortable. Let's keep things respectful. Jasmine cuts in, voice still calm. This is respectful. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm asking how someone can spend years fighting for justice when she herself helped the system skate. The room's atmosphere shifts. The camera crew feels it. The producers feel it. Viewers at home stop channel surfing. Jasmine shifts in her seat, her jaw tightening for a split second, just enough for anyone paying attention to notice. That's in the past. She finally says, I was a young attorney then. But you did it right, Candace asks, her voice softer. Silence again. Yes, I did what I thought was right, but that's not the point. That's exactly the point. Jasmine cuts in, because the truth never expires. But Candace Owens is just starting to pull the thread, and Jasmine Crockett doesn't realize how much is still waiting to be exposed. The silence on set lingers a second too long. Jasmine adjusts the mic clip on her lapel, not because it needs fixing, but to buy a moment to think. Her smile, always part of the performance, begins to falter. This isn't the script she expected. I think we're getting off track, she says, trying to regain balance. Dragging up my time as a young attorney doesn't negate the larger discussion about how justice is distorted in politics today. Candace doesn't flinch, actually. That's the thread. Candace replies, her voice cold but sharp. You say the justice system is fair, that people need personal responsibility. But when you were in that position, it was real enough for you to convince your client to give up the fight, and real enough for the city to pay. Jasmine opens her mouth. Continues, but let's be honest, you didn't overcome injustice by denying it. You got a settlement by acknowledging it. A faint murmur ripples through the live audience, almost inaudible, but undeniably present. The host, Brown James, is caught off guard. He glances at the producers off camera, then tries to steer the conversation. All right, maybe we should focus on current policy Congresswoman Crockett, but Candace doesn't let him interrupt. We're talking about current policy because of past patterns. We can't discuss justice if we pretend the past didn't happen. That includes her past. Candace emphasizes. Jasmine exhales sharply as if the air is forced out. You don't know me, she says. I know what you've said, Candace replies, and that's enough. Jasmine sits up straighter, her voice louder. You're twisting everything. People grow. My views have changed. I've learned that too many people lean on victimhood to make a living, and that holds back entire communities, but you didn't overcome it. Candace counters, you grew from it. You used that experience to build a career. And now, instead of helping young people stand up against injustice, you tell them they're imagining things that once made you act. The statement lands hard. Not just the room, feels it across every screen at home. Viewers sense it too. Jasmine shakes her head, giving a dry laugh, but this time the smile lacks sincerity. You're trying to paint me as a hypocrite just because I don't go around angry about what happened. She says no, Candace replies, her voice calm. I'm showing people your story isn't what you claim. You benefited from the very system you now call fair. A pause. Then Candace turns to the audience, looking straight into the camera. Here's the reality. Injustice doesn't end just because Jasmine Crockett became a congresswoman pretending it doesn't exist. Doesn't help those still trying to graduate without discrimination, get a job without changing their name on a resume, or survive a police stop. Another panelist, a former Washington state senator, clears their throat, visibly uneasy. Maybe we should move to discussing solutions, but the stage lights haven't shifted. Jasmine tries again. You think you're helping people by making them feel like victims. I'm helping them seize their power. Candace's voice doesn't rise. She doesn't need to shout. No, you're helping them forget the cost of that power. You make them forget the fight doesn't end when you get the mic. You tell them to stop complaining. But you once spoke out for justice. You were right to do so. Candace continues, you were right, but you forgot how it felt. The moment you held the mic, Brown James tries to cut to commercial, but the hesitation in his voice says it all. He knows this is the moment people will talk about, but Candace isn't done, not until she's made the contradiction so clear. No one can look away. The audience can't look away. Jasmine Crockett built her reputation on control. Her interviews are typically tight, forceful, unflinching, unflappable. That's her brand of the woman with an answer in every room, but tonight the rhythm is off. Candace Owens doesn't try to shout her down, mock her, or turn it into a spectacle. She just stands on solid ground and points out that Jasmine isn't who she claims to be. Jasmine reaches for a statistic she's memorized 100 times. Black Americans make up just 13% of the population, but commit over 50% of violent crimes. That's not emotion. That's FBI data. Candace's head slowly turns toward her, and this time her voice carries a hint of ice. Are you serious? Throwing out selective crime stats like they're absolute truth? They're not selective, Jasmine retorts, her voice sharp. They're facts, and they don't explain how those numbers are collected. Candace leans back in her chair. Police aren't neutral. Surveillance isn't neutral. Do you know how many crimes go unreported in wealthy white suburbs because they're handled quietly, but every incident in a poor black neighborhood is documented, arrested, prosecuted? You know that you've read the same reports I have. Jasmine's voice grows sharper. You can't justify violence just because it happens in a certain area. Candace leans forward. Nobody's justifying anything. I'm saying the system doesn't treat everyone equally, and you of all people should understand that. You lived it as a young attorney for the first time in the show. Jasmine looks visibly rattled, unsure what to say. She glances at the host. Brown James, but he just looks back. Not rescuing her, Jasmine switches tactics. "You know what's exhausting?" she asks, being told, "I'm not qualified to be a congresswoman, that I'm betraying my community just because I don't go around blaming everything on injustice." Candace cuts in immediately. "Nobody's calling you a traitor. I'm calling you dishonest. There's a difference." Jasmine sits back, crossing her arms. "You think people don't have a right to think differently?" "They do," Candace replies, "but when you stand on a national platform and use your own story to erase the pain of millions of others, that's not just thinking differently, that's selling a lie with your name on it." Jasmine laughs scornfully. "I'm not selling anything. What about you? Books, podcasts, paid speeches. You're selling a brand, and that brand requires you to pretend you never settled that lawsuit, never needed help, never got hurt." Jasmine's jaw twitches, her foot taps, the camera catches the moment. Brown James finally steps in. "Let's pivot a bit." "No," Candace says flatly. "Let's finish this point because it matters." The room quiets again, not tense but weary. Every time you tell a black kid they're making excuses. Candace says, "You're ignoring that you once needed someone to believe you, to take your client's fear seriously, to act on his behalf. Now you tell people doing that is weak?" Jasmine doesn't respond. "I'm not here to win an argument." Candace continues, "I'm here because too many people watching this show don't have anyone speaking directly to their experience, and I won't let anyone erase that just because it makes a good headline." A pause. The studio holds its breath, unsure what's coming. Then Jasmine breaks the silence, not with an argument, but a dodge. "Well, at least I'm not crying on cue for sympathy." She says that line sets it off. Candace laughs, not mocking, not malicious, but the kind of laugh you let out when someone reveals they've got nothing real left to say. "I've never asked for sympathy." Candace says, "Just accountability. But if that's too heavy for you, I can carry it myself." But Jasmine doesn't know. Candace still has one final card to play, and it's the card Jasmine Crockett can't escape. She tries to shift her tone, sitting up straight, smoothing her dress, and turning to the camera as if stepping back onto familiar ground. "I think we're seeing performative politics right now," she says. Congresswoman Crockett clearly cares more about going viral than being honest. Candace's hand rests lightly on her thigh. She doesn't blink, doesn't move, just watches Jasmine like someone trying to mop the floor while the faucet's still running. "You keep saying, 'I'm performing,'" she replies. "But tonight I'm just asking the questions you're afraid to answer. No spin, no slogans, just the truth." Jasmine smirks. Disdainful. "The truth is, people like, you need injustice to keep your career going." Candace doesn't turn to her. She looks straight at the host, Brown James, then out to the audience. "Let me be clear," she says, her voice low but resonant. "I didn't get elected by telling people they're victims. I got elected by saying they deserve better and fighting like hell to make sure they get it." Jasmine jumps in louder. "No, you got elected by selling fear and division like so many others." And then the moment arrives, Candace looks at her. Not angry, not smug, just calm. You can't rewrite history just because the cameras are rolling. The words hang like a foghorn in a quiet harbor. Everyone hears it. Everyone freezes. Even the cameras seem to hesitate. Jasmine's mouth opens, then closes. For the first time, she has no ready response. Candace leans in just slightly, her voice steady. "You convinced that client to take the settlement because you were scared, because you were young, because he was black and targeted. And that was real. His experience mattered then, and it still does. But what you're doing pretending, it never happened, pretending you didn't help the system, that's not strength, that's survival, dressed up as denial." Jasmine tries to pivot. "So now, I'm not allowed to change my views." "You can," Candace says, "but don't fool the people walking the path. You once needed help on Brown James." Is silent. The other panelists are silent. Someone reaches for a water bottle, slowly, as if afraid the sound will break the tension. Jasmine breaks the silence again, but her voice is slightly higher. "I'm not going to sit here and be accused of betraying my community." Candace raises an eyebrow. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm reminding you what accountability looks like." Jasmine shifts her laugh dry, more defensive now. "You know, I faced plenty of people trying to make me feel small." "You're not the first," Candace responds, her voice low. I'm not trying to make you small. I'm reminding you that you're bigger than this. The words don't hit like a punch, but like a mirror. For a moment, Jasmine's face shows a flicker as if something cuts through the armor, and Candace doesn't press further. She lets it settle. Brown James finally clears his throat. We're heading to commercial in a moment, but first, Candace cuts in her voice, rising just slightly. For the first time, I want to say this to the people watching at home. She turns to the camera, not the studio speaking to the kitchens, living rooms, and break rooms across the country. If you've ever been made to feel your experience, doesn't matter if someone tells you you're imagining things they don't want to face. Don't let them erase you. Don't let them cover up the truth just because it's hard to look at you. Matter even if the people holding the mic pretend you don't. She pauses, letting the moment sink in. The audience at home holds its breath while Jasmine struggles to find her rhythm again. The next few minutes only make things worse as the show cuts to commercial. Social media explodes clips from the confrontation flood timelines before the credits roll. Someone in the control room leaked a raw, unedited angle. No polish, no cuts. Just Candace Owens calmly holding her ground while Jasmine Crockett scrambled to defend herself. That line went everywhere. You can't rewrite history just because the cameras are rolling. It hit like thunder, spawning memes, GIFs, hashtags, even typically neutral accounts started posting screenshots and short clips. There was no spinning it fast enough to save the moment. Backstage, Jasmine paced the hallway, her high heels suddenly feeling too tight. Her assistant hovered behind, phone in hand, whispering updates she didn't ask for. "It's trending on X Top 5 nationwide," the assistant muttered. "One clip's already passed 4 million views." Jasmine didn't respond. She was too busy replaying the moment in her head, trying to pinpoint where she lost control and how Candace held the upper hand. Meanwhile, Candace sat calmly in the green room. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her, but she didn't touch it. She had nothing to explain. She didn't come to argue. She came to speak the truth, and the nation listened within an hour. Political analysts started weighing in. A well-known neutral radio host from an Oregon station said, "No matter where you stand politically, Candace Owens did what we expect from every public figure: show up with facts and don't flinch." Another posted on X, Jasmine Crockett met an opponent tonight who didn't play by her rules, and it showed, but the real power wasn't in the pundits' reactions. It was in the regular people, teachers, barbers, students, parents, flooding the comment sections. I followed Jasmine Crockett for years, and this is the first time I've seen her truly rattled. Candace didn't yell, didn't insult, didn't dodge. She put the truth in front of us and let us see who was squirming. She said, what we've been waiting for someone to say on national TV for a long time. There was sympathy too, but not for Jasmine. Viewers recalled the Dallas police brutality lawsuit. Candace brought up some dug-up archived Texas articles. Others found old interviews, court documents, even public filings. It all connected. Jasmine had helped a client settle with the system, yet now called it personal responsibility. The pressure mounted that night. Jasmine posted a statement on social media. "I won't apologize for growing and encouraging personal accountability. Yes, I handled a lawsuit as a young attorney, and I moved past it, not by dwelling on it, but by refusing to let it define me. Some can't handle that strength, but the comments weren't as supportive as before. Thousands pushed back. Growing doesn't mean erasing moving past, doesn't give you a pass to deny the truth. You can't hide behind growth while disowning the path you walked." Candace finally posted something of her own. It was brief. No mention of Jasmine. The truth doesn't need a headline. It just needs someone willing to stand by it 4 hours after the show. Candace's clip hit over 15 million views across platforms. Even people who didn't watch the show were quoting. Her backstage producers shook their heads in quiet awe. "I knew it'd blow up," one said, "but not like this." Brown James, sitting at the anchor desk, reviewed the footage, looked up, and said what many were thinking. Jasmine brought the noise, but Candace brought the receipts. The debate hit everyone differently depending on their political, social, or personal lens. But from every angle, one thing was clear. Candace Owens didn't just expose Jasmine Crockett. She exposed something bigger in coffee shops in Chicago, Atlanta, Portland, and Dallas. People kept talking. The confrontation spilled off the screen into real life. A woman at a bus stop in Oklahoma City told a coworker she wasn't even angry. And that made it hit harder. She just stood there like she's done it 100 times, because she has, for many viewers, Candace wasn't just debating, she was living what too many have experienced, being told injustice didn't happen, even as it unfolds. Being asked to forget when the scars are still fresh. Being told they're imagining patterns others have learned to ignore. Candace didn't come to play coy. She came to put the truth on the table and let it sit. No matter who it made uncomfortable in Washington, D.C., House members took notice. Some colleagues called others, sent discreet texts. A staffer from a nearby district said Candace didn't just win a debate. She showed accountability with poise. That's rare, and frankly, it's overdue. Usually, TV political debates turn into shouting matches where whoever speaks loudest or interrupts fastest gets the cheers, but Candace did the opposite. She slowed down, made the room quiet enough for the truth to echo. A young black woman in Oakland posted a video, sitting in her car, eyes wet, voice steady. I followed Jasmine Crockett for years, and I always felt uneasy when she said people like me were just playing the race card, but hearing Candace bring up that old lawsuit, the experience Jasmine tried to bury, man, it felt like someone finally spoke up. We're not crazy, we're not imagining things, and we're not alone. That was the core. Not about tearing someone down. Candace wasn't trying to destroy anyone. She wanted to remind people that erasing the past doesn't heal it, and silence isn't peace. It's just someone who stopped listening. The story hit hardest for those working in classrooms, courtrooms, clinics, people who see patterns of injustice up close, where names get skipped on resumes, voices get drowned out in meetings, consequences depend on who's watching. A high school teacher in Memphis wrote in her journal that night, "My students always ask if racism still exists. I used to dodge the answer today. I'll show them the clip it mattered, because Candace wasn't there to prove herself. She didn't need to. She was there to stand firm while others scrambled around the truth and eventually stumbled." The lesson wasn't about sides, not left or right, Democrat or Republican. It was simpler if you've been through something painful and then deny it. Just to score points, you're not strong, you're pretending. And people see the difference. Jasmine had power, sure, a platform, millions of followers. But that night, Candace had credibility that didn't come from followers, but from consistency, from tying the past to the present without pretending. The middle never happened. That's why it landed so hard, because people didn't see a takedown. They saw someone finally saying what needed saying. Unflinching, not shouting, not making it entertainment. But one question lingered, and it would shape how both were remembered. After that night, the storm hadn't settled, but the contrast was clear. Jasmine Crockett went into full response mode. She hit social media, dropped a podcast episode that same night, and unleashed a flurry of ex-posts to flip the narrative. She called Candace Owens, remarks performative politics accused American View Network of setting a trap, and warned followers that the truth is now seen as dangerous by the left. But this time, something was off. The response wasn't the unified rally she was used to. Her fans were still loud, still loyal, but quieter than usual, as if even they knew she didn't leave the studio with a win. More importantly, those outside her fan base weren't buying the spin. Meanwhile, Candace Owens didn't hold a press conference, didn't do 5 interviews, didn't post in all caps or share every compliment. She posted one photo herself, seated on the Voice of America, set hands lightly clasped with 4 words, "Stand by the truth." No hashtags, no jabs. Just the same calm she brought to the debate, the post sent a different message. One that lasted longer than the noise people shared it with. Captions like, "Strength isn't volume," or "The adult in the room." She didn't try to dominate social media. And because of that, she did. There's something magnetic about someone who knows they don't need to shout to be heard. And that's what Candace tapped into, a quiet authority, the kind that doesn't chase the mic, but is ready when it's handed over. At the same time, the discussion about Jasmine's past became unavoidable. People dug up records of the Dallas police brutality lawsuit she handled as a public defender, screenshots of filings, quotes from the case, archived articles, old interviews. It all surfaced, not to shame her, but to remind the public. This happened. She did it. She lived it, so why deny it? Now, the question echoed across newsrooms and online comments. If you settled with the system to get justice, why tell others not to? For some, it stopped being about Jasmine. It was about people they knew in real life. The aunt who told them to toughen up, the uncle who said injustice was over, the teacher who brushed off what they heard in the halls. Candace's words gave people the language to push back. A woman wrote on a blog, "I grew up being told admitting injustice made me weak, that if I worked harder, it would disappear." Watching Candace called that out without flinching, I felt like someone finally stood up for 17-year-old me. But Jasmine kept posting, kept responding, kept trying to reframe, yet her words didn't carry the same weight anymore. Not after people saw the clip, saw someone calmly, clearly peel back the mask and let the raw truth show. There's a difference between being loud and being remembered. Jasmine's brand was always volume, provocation, virality. But now people started asking what's left. When the noise fades, Candace gave the answer without saying it. Outright, legacy isn't built in a moment, but in how you handle the moment. A high school debate coach in Tacoma showed her students the footage and paused when Candace said, "I'm not trying to make you small, I'm reminding you that you're bigger than this." She asked her students, "When it's your turn to speak, who do you want to be in that moment?" No one picked volume, and so as the headlines kept spreading, the hashtag cycled. One thing grew clearer. Candace didn't just win a debate, she drew a line between performance and principle, and the audience saw it even as social media buzzed and her name climbed the charts. Candace knew the real victory wasn't in the views. It was in the quiet shift happening everywhere. It's easy to get caught up in moments like this, likes, trending hashtags, instant reactions, but what lingered with people after the smoke cleared wasn't Candace's sharp comebacks or viral line. It was how she made the truth feel like something you could trust again in homes across America. Parents replayed the clip with their kids not for entertainment, but as a lesson. A dad in Cleveland paused it halfway, telling his teenage daughter, "This is how you stand up for yourself without lowering yourself." An elderly woman in Sacramento opened the clip on her phone saying, "She reminds me of how we used to hold our dignity even when we were angry." That's what people kept talking about, dignity. Not the polished for TV kind, but how Candace kept her voice steady. When Jasmine tried to provoke, how she stood firm without raising her tone. How she faced contradiction with calm, making the audience reflect. Instead of shout, even some of Jasmine Crockett's supporters started having quiet conversations. Not that they suddenly agreed with Candace on everything, but because they saw something undeniable, a mirror. They didn't expect a contradiction they couldn't explain. And quietly something shifted, not dramatic, not a wave or a movement, like a change in temperature, slow, steady. Real, a college student in Seattle, wrote on a blog, "I used to admire Jasmine's confidence. Now I see it was just volume. Candace showed me what real strength looks like when you don't panic, no matter who tries to shake you." People weren't just reacting, they were reflecting. That was the difference, because what Candace did on that stage wasn't just correcting someone. She reminded people that standing by the truth isn't weak, that speaking calmly doesn't mean you don't feel the fire, that you don't need to raise your voice to raise the standard. And she did it with poise, with truth, with perfect timing, with silence, when silence spoke louder than anything in the room. That's what lingered in the weeks that followed. Candace's clip kept being shared, not because it was sensational, but because it resonated. People watched it over and over, like they were trying to memorize the feeling it gave them. A reminder that you don't need to be ruthless to be clear. Don't need to shout to make your point. You just need to stand in the truth and not blink when they try to drown you out. That's exactly what she did. When the noise settled and attention moved to the next big thing, Candace Owens went back to work on air writing, speaking to audiences with the same care she brought to the debate. She didn't need to milk the moment because it had done its job, reminding people what courage looks like when it's quiet, clear, and rooted in truth. In the end, that was bigger than any headline, the story of the debate between Candace Owens and Jasmine Crockett on Voice of America vividly captures the tense emotional dialogues in American society today, where issues like race, criminal justice, and personal responsibility often become flashpoints in public arguments. In the story, Candace uses public records to expose Jasmine's contradiction in a Dallas police brutality lawsuit, where Jasmine, as a public defender, convinced her client to take a low settlement, clashing with her current stance on system reform. Candace's line, "You can't rewrite history just because the cameras are rolling," paired with her calm and incisive evidence, got audiences from Chicago to Memphis, reflecting while Jasmine's defensive efforts on social media through a podcast and posts accusing the show of a setup drew public criticism for lacking conviction. This story mirrors a reality in America where social media can amplify voices, but honesty and dignity often earn lasting respect in a world where debates easily become shouting matches. Choose to stand by the truth with poise, as Candace did, instead of denying past mistakes like Jasmine tried with the Dallas lawsuit. Own them to build credibility, the public's reaction from the dad in Cleveland teaching his daughter about dignity, to the teacher in Memphis using the clip as a lesson, shows Americans crave honest dialogue, unclouded by performance or evasion. So whether in work, family, or social media, be truthful about your story, listen to others, and stand by the truth, because that's how you create lasting change in your community. Subscribe to join us in standing by the truth and continuing meaningful dialogues like Candace did. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next.